Thank you everyone for joining us for today's session on learning through teaching, authentic feedback and assessment using Flipgrid. My name is Destiny Miller and I'm honored to introduce our speaker, Dr. Nick Panasic. Dr. Panasic is an associate professor of biology at Clayton University, South Carolina's oldest HBCU. He has been the recipient of several teaching excellence awards, including being named by the governor as the Distinguished Professor of South Carolina for his development of research-based, student-centered, active learning techniques. A few quick technical notes before I pass the mic over to our speaker. This session is live captioned, so please use the CC button at the bottom of your Zoom screen to turn on subtitles if you need them. If you have any questions for our speakers, please feel free to submit them in the general chat. We'll be keeping track of those questions as they come in, and I'm hopeful that there will be time for Q&A near the end of our hour. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming our speaker, Dr. Panasic.
Hi, thank you all very much for attending. I want to thank Sarah and Destiny and the Great Course Hero team for all their work to make this a great education summit. And I want to thank you all for coming and for being interested in teaching and learning. I know there's a lot of things we could be doing right now, and it's very impressive when you take the time out of your day to hear what other folks have to say, learn from each other, give opinions, and work out new strategies for success with our students and in our own careers in research. So thank you very much. I will try and make my presentation as useful to you as possible. So if there are questions you can ask that make that happen easier, please ask them. I don't mind being interrupted at all. And with that, I'll get started. Thank you very much. Okay, so what I want to talk to you today is about using the technique that you all use, teaching, only flipping the paradigm and getting students to teach. But before I get into that, I want to find out a little bit from the audience that's in this particular room, what matters now for you? What are the concerns that you have, things you're most concerned about? I'd like to hear if you can chime in just by voice. That would be great. Just like in a classroom, all the students trying to be quiet, not sure what to say. But I'm curious, when you came here, what is it you're looking for?
Hi, my name is Hirut Balacho. I'm an adjunct clinical faculty in two different universities. I teach at PG Community College, and I also teach at Bowie State University, and mainly OB clinical. And what matters to me is with this pandemic that we have the last year, we were doing online, and there was a struggle to engage the students. Sometimes I felt like I was teaching elementary school, and I call my student and say, what do you think of this? Because I want them to be engaged. But it seems like there's more. Like the previous presenter, it was so much research is happening, and I would really like to get more. And that's the reason I came for this summit. And I would like to just learn more. It matters. We want to make sure we engage them, and we want to make sure we provide them the 21st century teaching and learning. I just want to improve.
So, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Please.
So I teach graduate students who are full-time classroom teachers, and our program has been online since 2014, but it is totally asynchronous. And I don't find that the depth of learning is there for these students. And so I'm looking for strategies and techniques that will help them take more responsibility for their own learning and to be a bit more self-directed and independent in the work that they do.
Excellent, excellent. So I think Harut really summarize kind of what we all went through with COVID and a lot of our concerns with that. And especially in asynchronous courses, how do you get engagement? As I'm scrolling through the chat, what I'm seeing most commonly is how do you get engagement? Yes, this session is on Flipgrid. We'll get to that in just a second. I think I've also seen in the chat assessment, a good means for an authentic assessment. When we switched over to online and we're trying to do assessments online, you have no idea if you're giving them an exam, if they're going on the internet. Some people have these lockdown things, so they can't go anywhere on their computer except for the exam, but they got a phone or 3 other devices in the house, and so it's not really easy to measure. And so hopefully what I'm going to present to you today is something that can allow you to do an authentic assessment. We'll talk more about that. Other things that I think are probably really important in our minds that we should be thinking about is how to teach critical thinking. And of course, this whole idea of academic integrity, if we're going to be doing anything online or even in the classroom. And I think what's gotten us kind of down because of COVID is we're all worried about, we've had a lot of students drop out, a lot of students weren't learning well. So we're looking at the bare minimum, like what can we do to survive and stay above water? But I really think that now is the time to look ahead and think about concepts that we haven't been talking about. Concepts like mastery of the material, self-confidence in presenting and understanding that material, as well as depth of knowledge. That's the key one that I think we can really get at today with the technique that I'm going to talk about, which is this idea of peer teaching, where students become the teacher. They synthesize what you've taught in the course, so you'll actually be teaching the course like you do in your normal lectures. And I trust that all of you are energetic and exciting and fun teachers. That isn't going to change with this idea. What this does is at the end of the week, it adds something new. You're going to ask these students to, now that they've learned it from you, to attempt to teach that material to the rest of the class. And they'll make a video recording while they do that. And that's what Flipgrid is all about. It's just a platform that makes it really easy to do these kinds of recordings and really easy to watch them, grade them, share them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's platform independent. It doesn't matter what your learning management system is, whether you got Moodle or Blackboard or anything like that. It's just accessible on a browser or even through a phone. So what I do with this peer teaching, I've done it now actually, I did peer teaching not with Flipgrid for several years. It arose out of in NSF early career, where the education section, we're trying to do some research into the teaching of science. But when we moved in the pandemic, I was kind of searching for a platform, and this actually improved it by, I can't tell you how much. So what we do in class is I'll give my regular lecture in class, and then at the end of the week, I'll have them teach the major concept that I've covered that week to the rest of the class. They'll record a video that's about 4 to 10 minutes long. I try to keep them somewhere in that range. And when you go to the Flipgrid platform, it's fairly easy. You just go to flipgrid.com. Once you sign in, and I'm going to include some links at the end of this. I made a little video on how to set up Flipgrid and then how to do some of the grading and stuff, and I'll include those links at the end. But once you've set up your Flipgrid, you can set up groups. So each one of these groups is a different class, and then you can pick on a class, and then you can post different questions. And so these will be content questions. I always start the course with an introduction question, which is just introduce yourself. And that one's going to be open to the whole class as they're posted. But all of these other ones are going to be invisible to the class until you've had a chance to review them. And so with any particular question you've got, there'll be some content that you want them to describe or to teach. And then you let them have at it. And you will be surprised with the results. You're going to get a long range with the students in terms of comfort in being watched on video and recording themselves. The neat thing is about the platform is it's very easy to edit the video, to retake it, to edit out parts, to pause it, think about stuff, and start again. And so what you get is a very rehearsed answer to the question or teaching of the question that you're hoping for. So the second step, once they've done that and posted it up, nobody else can see it, what you're going to do, at least what I found to be incredibly effective, is you're going to watch it, but you're going to record yourself watching it. And I've got some step-by-step instructions, which I'll include in a link in the chat. I can actually put that right now, but I'll include it again later on. And what this does, it allows you to start watching it. The first time you watch it, you don't watch it once and then record yourself. First time you're watching it, you bring it up, you bring up the little camera using Zoom. It's really easy to do. And as they're speaking and explaining and teaching the topic, you can pause it and then respond to exactly what they're saying. You can give them praise. You could say, oh, yeah, the way you're explaining is kind of right, but you missed this little point, et cetera, et cetera. And so this allows you to give this kind of extemporaneous feedback where they feel like you're talking to them and they're talking to you. Here they're giving you their best rendition of trying to teach that topic. And it's better than when they come at you at the end of class and ask you a question about their understanding. Oh, I think about it this way. Is that right? I get that a lot from students because this one's rehearsed. They've had a chance to really think about it, what they're going to say, go back if it's not exactly right, et cetera. And so the feedback you're giving them is on their best conception of whatever that idea is that you're trying to teach. And the response that you'll record is only going to be available to that student. It's important when you do this to establish a rubric for just about any topic. There are going to be several key points that somebody has to cover. And you can just kind of check them off on a piece of paper as you listen. You probably know these topics well enough to just be able to hear when they cover all the important points. Or if they miss something. So listen for the nuances in their explanations and address them. And I would highly recommend the first time you do this for a class, it's just before you watch their teaching video, go ahead and watch their introduction video. Because then it'll be fresh in your mind who they are, what they're interested in, what their career goals are. So you can actually tailor your first response so it's really towards them as well as their goals. You can talk about, well, this is important for med school. If you're talking about biology or whatever kind of professional advice you want to give. I'm just going to throw up an example rubric. This is going to be meaningless to anybody who's not in chemistry or biochemistry. But I'd have, like, say, for a particular question, this one's described the hydrophobic effect. I might have about 8 points. There's 8 important things you got to mention to really fully describe that topic in depth. And so if they get all 8 points, I'll give them 90% right off the bat, I might include an additional 5% if they've had visuals or props or an active demonstration. I might take off points if they had a bad analogy or inaccurate facts, et cetera. But by having a rubric, you've got kind of a set way you're going to kind of grade all these and you're listening for those points. But you can all make up your own rubrics. You've all done that a million times and you're professionals. So once you get to that point, so you're watching it, the grading is so simple because basically what you do is you listen to it, you pause, give them a couple comments, and then at the end, you hit end and you write your letter in the grade book. There isn't a connection between the Flipgrid platform and the LMS for grades, so you'll just put it in your grade book. And then you go on to the next one, and you can just chug through them real fast. So think about it, if you've got, I had a class of 40 students, actually 45 students. For the average 5-minute video, that's 5 minutes per student, so 40 students times 5. My response video will be the length of theirs, plus a little bit more, so maybe it'll take 6-7 minutes. That means just a few hours of grading, and I've got them all done. It's probably less grading than you would have on, say, a problem set or a paper where you have to write out the same comments over and over. And the impact is going to be greater when they're looking at your face and you're responding to what they're saying, not to what they wrote in non-sentences. I got lots of problems with that. So initially you have it set up so when they make recordings for content, they're not visible to the rest of the class. Once you've watched it, if you've given them an A, you make their video visible to the rest of the class. And that's going to have a really important effect later on. You can also show snippets during irregular classes or review sessions. That certainly builds up confidence, and students love it when their material is used. The thing I like about this is some of the amazing benefits that we've seen. Student videos are available up there on these contents. So only the A ones, only the ones that got everything correct are up there. But now a student, there might be 5 or 6 videos that they could watch explaining the whole thing of what they learned this last week. And, you know, I like to think of myself as a good teacher, but in talking to students, I had a lot of students say, you know, I really learned that topic best when Sheila or John explained it in their video. And as much as I like to really, you know, be happy about my own teaching, I'm really happy if they found a way to learn it, even though I didn't explain it the way that really resonates with them. Remember, these students are closer in age, closer in a lot of things, so maybe they have more ways to relate a particular topic or not. Some people are just creative, and it's nice to see a bunch of different creative ways that they can kind of describe a topic, if you will. So that becomes a resource for class that people study from. And it's approved material from you to study from because 1, it's the content you've covered in the week, and 2, you've gone through it and they've covered all the points and taught it correctly. So they can use it for studying for exams, assignments, or just their own understanding. One thing you'll see, and I'll try and give you evidence for everything I'm talking about, is it seems to increase their desire to get to know other students, and they get these one-on-one videos tailored to them that really look at their particular misconceptions that you correct. So it's quite effective. I think all of you recognize this quote. I never really understood the topic until I had to teach it. And that's what this is all about, because when you go to teach something, yeah, you might know it in your head, but then you got to start getting those facts together. How am I gonna, what order am I gonna present it in? And if there's a part of it that you don't completely get, like you're not really sure in the connection, you'll be like, well, wait, before I explain it, I really have to understand this part. And so you'll go back. And that's what students do. They end up preparing for this because they know other students are going to see this. And beyond all motivations, the motivation I see the most often is peer pressure and peer motivations. They want to look good in front of their friends. They don't want to look stupid in front of their friends. And that's way more than looking stupid in front of the teacher, at least for me. So they prepare. They had to think of what they would say, how they would say it. They had to resolve those problems in their own understanding. In a lot of cases, they'll prepare like little pictures. Sometimes it's hand-drawn diagrams, etc. At least that's the idea behind how this supposedly works. But don't take my word for it. One of the last Flipgrids I did in my course was asking them how has Flipgrid helped or not helped. And so with that, I'd like you to hear from Damian George. He's one of the students that did this, and this is very indicative. I've got a few different videos I could play from students. I'll start with this one later on. If we got more time, I might do some more. But here's Damian and what he has to say about Flipgrid.
Hi everybody, my name is Damian George, and for the last Flipgrid of this year, I wanted to say that I think Flipgrid has helped me. First off, it's helped me learn a lot of stuff, like actually learn it instead of memorize a bunch of stuff. It's actually helped me learn and actually dig deep on how to actually study and actually be able to learn something in order to teach it to somebody, because you can't just teach anything to somebody unless you know it and can talk a lot about it. So I had to do a lot of research. I had to do a lot of my own working in order to be able to keep making videos and keep being like interactive and informative at the same time. But overall, I liked the Flipgrid. I liked how I could be able to teach my teach, not my students, but teach my classmates different types of stuff. I feel like it was a good experience. I've never like had this experience before, so it was a really good experience overall, and I enjoyed doing it. And best part about being on Flipgrid is having your video posted because it was good. That's probably the best parts about it, because then you just be like, yeah, that was a good video. But I appreciate it overall. It was really good.
And I'll get to some of the questions that I'm seeing in the chat. There's one about students being comfortable on camera and whether or not you need to give permission. So when you start this process off, you say, well, one of the ways I want to assess you is I want to see you describe this subject to me. And if they have any problems with you with other people seeing it, you can say, okay, for yours, I won't ever post it to the class, even if you've got an A. And that usually suffices. I haven't had a problem with that. Let's hear from Anshel.
Hi everyone, my name is Anshel Ross, and today I will be talking about how Flipgrid has helped me. So initially, I used to get a lot of anxiety recording these, as I'm not that big on public speaking. However, as time passed during the course, it helped me gain confidence in what I was studying, and being able to see my Flipgrids get posted also helped me build confidence and made me a little bit more comfortable, not only speaking in front of the camera, but also being able to teach others the concept that I was studying. So Flipgrid has helped me build confidence in my public speaking, and it's also helped me study more efficiently, because it's one thing to study for exam, but it's another thing to study so that you master the material and are able to teach it to others. So that's how Flipgrid has helped me, and I hope that it's helped you all the same way.
Isn't that cool?
Hi everyone, my name is
isn't that cool? There was another one that I had, another story I have from a student. It's so cool. She was saying that in the beginning, she couldn't stand doing Flipgrids because she didn't like how she looked, and she was just nervous about being in front of other people. And then a little bit further on in the semester, she started getting lots of emails and lots of contacts from students asking her questions about stuff in the course. And she's like, well, why are you asking me? And they're like, well, you really know this material. Look at your Flipgrids. You really are teaching it well, and I understand how you're. And what that did for her confidence was amazing, because now she sees people coming to her for her own descriptions, the way she's describing it and her understanding, where she didn't even know she was doing a good job. I mean, she was getting A's, but it really did a lot for her confidence, and that was cool. These are anecdotal things. I'm a scientist, and so I really believe in data-driven stuff. And so I'd actually really like to talk to you about actual assessment data, so we can really dig into this technique and see if it's worthwhile. So the data presented here are collected from two different courses. One has 47 students, another one has 14 students. One's a graduate course, one's an undergraduate course. The data comes from pre and post questionnaires, recorded interviews, which have been coded and scored, student evaluations, and exam scores. And so it's going to be looking at impacts on the sense of community in the class, sense of self-efficacy within the discipline, sense of confidence with the topics, feelings about one-on-one instructor time, and learning outcomes, actual learning outcomes. Did they learn stuff? So first off, student responses on peer teaching. Out of several different responses, 72% responded that they felt the use of peer teaching made them feel more engaged in the course. 55% responded they felt the use of peer teaching created a better sense of connection with the teacher. And 66% felt they learned the topic better when they had to teach it. I might have expected that number to be a little bit larger, but that's what the data showed. Again, for the N equals 47 group, 98% of students reported feeling a strong sense of pride when their Flipgrid went public. So I inquired a little bit deeper just to find out the motivations behind doing Flipgrids, why they like doing them or wanted to do them. 25% said that their main motivation for doing Flipgrids was to teach others. Another 25% was just to display their knowledge to the teacher. And half of them said they like doing them because it helped them learn the topic better, which is awesome because they're engaging in the material. They know their friends are going to be watching it, so they continue to engage. Another bit of data that I got, which is really interesting, and this is to look at sense of community, is I mentioned that at the beginning of the course, I do a Flipgrid that's open to everyone where they just introduce themselves. They give their name, where they're from, what their interests are, and their career goal. And that's visible to everyone from the start. And one of the things I noticed is the total number of views of the videos increased each week. So I delved into that a little bit longer or more in depth. By the end of the course, 60% of the students had more views than the number of students in the class, which meant that people were going back and watching them over and watching them over. Why is that? Because they're studying for an exam. And I've heard that many times. So here's like a sample. This is one of the, from that course, this is was the introduction question. And then as you scroll down, a bunch of students, I've removed their last names. You can see the number of views for these different students. Again, this class had 47. So you can see that some of these views are a pretty decent number, and then some of them climb even higher, all the way up to 116. We got 111. This is a class of 47. For Victoria, as they looked at her, 104 different times of her introduction. So what they're doing is they're going back. They want to learn more about who is this person that I'm learning from. And that was really interesting. But to look at it a little bit more in detail, if you start looking at the content videos, this is still on introductions. So we had 2,600 total views for the 50 introduction videos. 3 students left the course in, I think, the first 2 weeks. Average views per student's around 53. For the top 7 Flipgridders, the average views per student was 88. So in other words, that's showing us that for those who keep posting their vids, it have several different videos. Students are going back and trying to look and find out more about who that quote unquote teacher is. And the range goes from anywhere from 49 views for the lowest of the top 7 Flipgridders all the way to 111. There was one that was 220, but that's removed from the data set because that person passed away mid-course. And I think she got a lot of views because it was a nice video. So to look at other things, assessment of self-efficacy in science. So this is how well they feel confident in their ability to understand biological concepts. We're at 79% that feel more confident, and then about 20% that feel less or same. Likewise, if you look at self-identification in science. So after taking this course, are you more a science person? Do you feel more, see yourself more as a science person? What's a science person? I didn't give any description of what that meant. It was up to them to figure out. It's just to see what their self-identification is with science. And it looked like a good almost 60% had an increase feeling, oh, wow, I'm more like this kind of person after taking these courses and doing these things. And then students found that the use of Flipgrids made me feel like ... And then these were the choices that they had. About 10% felt they had less than one-on-one time with the professor than an on-ground class. About 43% said they had as much one-on-one time with the professor as an on-ground class. And a whopping 47% felt that they had more. That's 90% of students that are feeling that they have as much or more one-on-one time with the professor as an on-ground class. You're like, well, wait, how can that be? Think about it. How many students ask questions in class, right? In your typical class? Few, 4, 5, 6, 7. How many come up after class? 2, 3, 4, 5. They might ask you, well, I'm thinking about it this way. Is it correct? And you can comment on it. How many come to office hours? Okay, you probably get a few during there as well. How many do none of the above? Okay, it's that group right over here, that 47% that now they're engaging with you in this one-on-one video, coming back, and you're coming back at them with the video. And they're doing this every week, 10 minutes every week, one-on-one time. Did I understand this week's material? Go on to the next one. Did I understand this week's material? It gets to be really, really, really exciting. Now, lastly, what about learning? Okay, so what I did here to try to get an assessment of the impact of learning is I looked at exam questions. I took 5 questions that had a Flipgrid component where the question was asked first on Flipgrid, and they did that whole thing. And then I found 5 questions that were of equivalent difficulty, as best I could determine, that didn't have a Flipgrid component to them at all. And what I saw is, in both cases, about a 12% increase in the grades that they got when there was a Flipgrid component, because they had to learn it better to teach it. When you use that part of your brain to try and teach something, it contacts a lot of different parts of your brain, helps you with retention for sure. And I think that's the effect that we're seeing here. So above a letter grade in the course. In terms of confidence with material, okay, so this is coming from the N equals 14 sample set. Pre-test, I was asking, rate your ability to understand biochemical concepts. Before the class started, they rated their own ability at a 7.3 on average. By the end, 9.5. That's a 22% increase in confidence and their ability to understand concepts. Next, confidence in presenting. Rate your ability to verbally describe scientific concepts. Beginning of the class, first walking in, we're at about 6.4. Now we're at about 8.2. So this is showing some expert level kind of confidence. Oh yeah, it's a science thing. I can explain something even though it's very complicated. Now, these were done in biochemistry and molecular dynamics courses. So these are very concept heavy, thick courses. So they're describing very complicated things, if that helps in any of this. Back to one-on-one time with the instructor. How much one-on-one time do you get from your instructor in an online course? The expectation was about 6.2, the beginning of the class. At the end of the class, they felt that, well, it jumped by about 21%. So that to me is a really good outcome, because it's showing that they felt like they got a lot more one-on-one time with you than they expected. Also asked them similarly about their openness to online courses. So at the beginning of the course, I asked them to rate how effective online courses are at teaching them. And the average answer was at about a 6.5. And after the course, 7.5. So a 10% in receptiveness to online teaching. And again, with the N equals 14, there was a similar 12 to 13% increase in their grades. And so one of the things I want to say is what I like about this is really how it's an accurate form of assessment, or an authentic form of assessment. You don't have to worry about somebody having other devices when they're taking an exam. You don't have to worry about plagiarism when you're reading a paper that somebody submitted describing a topic. I can't begin the number of times where I've just pasted in a few sentences into Google and found nearly the exact same thing on the internet. You've all encountered that. Then you get these things which, you know, they have the software that detects plagiarism and gives them a percentage. So they keep going back and changing words with synonyms to bring that percentage down. So when you read it, you're like, why in the world are they using that synonym for that term? That doesn't make any sense. I'm sure you've all seen that. You get to assess their most rehearsed version of their understanding, which I think is key, because they put their thoughts in order first. And then so now they're really receptive. And what's neat, when you record yourself watching their video, they can see what they were saying, then you paused it, then you commented on that. It'll remind them of what they were thinking. Now you're responding exactly to what they're thinking. It's even better than one-on-one in live person, because you can't rewind and say, well, see exactly how you said that? You use that one word there. That's what makes it wrong. But here you can rewind and show and talk about it, and they can see exactly what they said that you're responding to, because we're human beings. We always think we said something slightly differently. So I see benefits to well-being. It definitely increases student engagement. I think on the Course Hero website for that course, it was 250 hours of engagement of people watching videos back and forth. If you look at the number of views of the content question videos, not the introduction ones, you'll see those viewed more times than the number of people in the class. So you consistently see they're going back, not all of them, but they're consistently going back to try and understand that topic, not only from my pre-recorded lectures, which are available online for the course, but for these other students. It also builds a sense of community for the class, because they go back, they look at the videos of the introduction videos of who else is there, they see them teaching, and then I'll show snippets in class. Sometimes we'll make jokes about stuff. You got to be a little bit careful with that. But it definitely improves confidence in this depth of knowledge, which we're really afraid to address because we're just worried about engagement, really gets to come to the front, because when you teach it, the depth that you teach it to is the depth they'll bring it back to you at. And that's what's really cool, because they have a role model. They see what the standards are based on what you do, because you're like, okay, now I want you to teach that same topic. They're going to go over your lecture a gazillion times, go over their notes, whatever it takes for them to do it. And that's exactly what you want. And if you teach it in depth, they're going to try and spit it back and teach it back. But it's not spitting it back, because when they're teaching it, they're trying to understand it and explain it in their own words, which is awesome. So other benefits of the classroom: provides these alternate explanations for students to go back to. The grading provides that one-on-one FaceTime, and it really increases the sense of the connection with the professor. I have to say, I've been teaching for about 15, 16 years, and that was the first class where I felt like I knew every single student. And I pride myself on getting to know my students, being very accessible and stuff like that. But week after week after week, seeing each student, hearing what their thoughts were, you know, what their understanding was, and then giving them feedback on that really helped us to grow as a class. And it seems to improve the receptivity to online learning. I had a bunch of folks tell me they loved it. It was their first time doing it. That it was one of the few courses that they were actually learning from, because it forced them to actually not just regurgitate, but to really think about it and engage. Yeah, pretty much they did a video. I think there were 1 or 2 weeks where we didn't have a video due to like exams and other things going on in the school and such like that. But for the most part, now, in terms of, I see a question in the chat, that's where I'm going right now, about homework and such. I like having homework. I've always done problem sets. I started cutting back on the problem sets because, you know, I'll get these problem sets and I'll give feedback, but the effectiveness of that feedback is so much stronger in this format. Now, depending on what you do, if it's like math stuff, yeah, they're gonna have to do homework problems and things like that. So it depends on what the material is that you have to go through for it. How much time on average did your students spend preparing per video? My guess would be about 2 to 3 hours, sometimes a little bit more, for some folks a little bit less, depending on what their confidence level was going into it. But I'd see them like draw out on a piece of paper, they'll hold it up, you know, to the screen to help them teach that material and stuff like that. And I was like, well, that's cool. Okay, good. And now I have this repository as well of things I can always go back to. So and so the last thing I want to say is the easy to grade. If you've got a class up to 50 students, I highly recommend this. It was so much more of a pleasure to grade because I'd sit back, I'd watch what they had to say, their best rehearsed understanding of the material, and then I could comment directly at different parts. And since I knew kind of about their career goals from their introductions, I could relate it to them specifically and then move on from there. And I did that from week to week to week. And so by the end, I'm actually talking about not just the material, but, you know, their presentation ability, you know, and how they can improve their speaking or et cetera, or presentations. And it's a one and done. You watch, you move on to the next one. You watch, you say a couple of things, you move on to the next one. I'm spending all my time teaching them by giving feedback and then just marking off little grades instead of spending hours writing and writing and writing and writing. They feel more engaged. I feel like I'm getting to know them. And if you do understand a topic really well, you should be able to teach it, right? So thank you very much for listening to all my gobbledygook. I really appreciate the fact that you stood here this long, and I'd love to entertain any questions that you might have. In the meantime, I'm going to post in the chat. Oh, there are. Destiny, thank you, Destiny, for posting those how-to videos.
Of course. I'm going to go ahead and open it up so that our attendees can unmute themselves and ask you questions.
Oh, great. I tried to leave a little bit of time for this.
All right, everybody's unmuted. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and asking your question when you have one.
So, Nick, my name is Jennifer Wells, and I teach nursing students. So, very high stakes learning. Would you ever think about, I kind of put this in the chat, but I'm going to ask it here, about having them do this as a class preparation so that you can kind of gauge where you need to go for your lecture, or is it more about assessment?
I've only done it post because I'll go ahead and I'll teach the concept, and it's not just about assessment. It's in the act of doing the video and the act of trying to teach it employs critical thinking. It employs all these different kinds of skills and brain functions that I think help retention. And so really it's not, it was initially designed not even as an assessment, but really to increase retention and increase, you know, engagement, getting them to dive in, forcing them to dive into the material. I never thought about doing it as a pre-assessment to see where they're at, but one could do that. I wouldn't continually do that because I'd be sitting through a lot where all I'm doing is learning from them. I like the fact that when I'm watching these, I'm also giving them the feedback right off the bat. And so I feel like I'm teaching and modifying, you know, their understanding of things.
Thank you.
I see a question, do the students pick the topic from a list? No. At the end of the week, so like say if I've been teaching a week on, you know, say the forces that interact between molecules, and so my question for the week will be describe the hydrophobic effect, because I probably spent about 2 lectures covering different points, trying to re-explain it and really delve into what it means and all that kind of stuff. And then they've got to consolidate whatever they're learning and whatever topic question you're asking in about 5-10 minutes. But they all have the same question. And so they'll just be, and then they can see how they explain it. They know how they explain it. They can always watch their own video, and then they can look at how somebody else A-level explained it and look at the difference. You can see a few different A-levels. And that's what a lot of students do.
Do you have a computer lab where they can record for students who don't have their own computers and everything in the computer lab?
We do. More often than not, students do it on their phone if they don't have a computer. Just about everybody has a phone. these days. But if you're working that situation where you have people that don't have those resources, if you're going to make this part of your course, you want to make sure that people have access to it. But since it can be done from a phone or a tablet or just about anything, it's nice. Some of the computer labs, if it doesn't have a camera, it's not going to be very useful. Laptops generally come with cameras on them. So they got a laptop, they're in a pretty good situation.
Nick, I wanted to bring up a question that came up in the chat earlier about rubrics. Did you do you share that ahead of time with the students, and how does that work with the Flipgrid?
Often what I'll do is I do quizzes a bit, and in not every class, but a lot of classes. And when I do the quiz, they all respond to the question, and then I go through the answer to the quiz and I say, well, remember for this, it's not right unless you covered A, B, and C. And so they're used to this idea of there being salient points. And when I teach the topic, I try and teach it such, remember, if you're going to talk about the hydrophobic effect, you're going to need to talk about some of these really important points. I'll go ahead and I'll put that back up on the screen just so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. It can be helpful to mention it ahead of time, but you kind of really want to see where they're going to go to teach it. You don't want to constrain them too much, but you can share it ahead of time. There's no reason why you couldn't.
Great presentation. Thank you very much. Can you elaborate a little bit more on why you use Flipgrid and not do this through the learning management system that you have at your institution?
The learning management, so we use Moodle. I haven't seen an easy, let's record me and then post it to the teacher and then let the teacher post it to the class. I haven't seen a really easy way to do that in my LMS. So, it's possible to upload videos, but that's a long process of making a video and then uploading it. You have to make it in a different program. Maybe some LMSs, have this whole thing built in, which case I'm not trying to tout Flipgrid. I'm not trying to sell anything for them. I'm just talking about the idea of having students teach and then it being available to other students to learn from, and then for students to get excited that people are learning from them builds confidence. And the more they present on it, the more comfortable they'll feel. I see a question, how long does it take to grade a B-level video? Just as long as it takes to grade just the other ones. Usually if it's a 5-minute long video, probably take me about 6 minutes, maybe 7. If I feel particularly animated and can figure out what's going on with the student, maybe I'll take 30 seconds more to do it, and I just mark in the grade and I'm done. But all that time, I feel rewarded because I'm giving feedback that matters, that pertains to their understanding and pointing stuff out. It's a heck of a lot more fun than actually just grading, which I can't stand, but who does?
I saw a question in the chat that I didn't actually hear addressed, which was, how do students react that never get their videos up?
As I was going through trying to tabulate all the different views and stuff like that, there weren't many students that out of the course of all the ones that we did, there weren't many that didn't get their, I couldn't find one that never had a video posted. But certainly that could happen. I still think there's benefit because they can see, they have multiple explanations. So I teach a course in pedagogy to graduate students. And one of the things I tell them, when you go in and you're going to teach material, always have at least 3 ways to explain something, preferably 5. What a lot of teachers do when they explain something, a student asks a question, they'll repeat their explanation only slower. And it's not that they have a problem with the speed, it's, you know, they need a different conception of it. And having so many of their different peers, you know, have their spin on it or their angle that they're coming at it from can be very refreshing and very helpful. And they're fun to watch. And you get to know these kids. You know, sometimes they relate it, you know, some of them like to relate it to their sports or to whatever they're doing. And so it's interactive. It's really nice. Oh, yes. So I'd say comment here, I teach middle school and the parents would love to see and hear their teachers' comments. My kids were doing online for COVID, and I was talking with their teacher, telling them about what I was doing with the Flipgrid. They started doing that with my kids. It was really fun to watch their responses. I really liked that a lot. And they love doing it. One of the things I used to do with my kids when they were littler, I'd take them to school with me sometimes, give them 2 minutes, 5 minutes to teach a little something to the class. They'd get up on the table and the pride that you get, that you see in their eyes. Oh, wow, I explained this to all these people, and the clapping and all that. Good thing, good thing. Other questions, please. Do I use discussions as well? Yes, not as much as I probably would have if I didn't have this, just because curating discussions for me sometimes can be a little painstaking, keeping track of who's responding to who and trying to figure out is that a valuable, value-added response, et cetera, what some people do with their discussions and such. Can be kind of a headache. I don't want there to be a discussion for discussion's sake, for like an assignment's sake. I wanted whatever activities they do, I want them to be learning from. And some people learn from discussion, but a lot of times it's, I have to do this discussion thing, so I'm gonna scan through and do a bunch of stuff. I've known other friends who've taken online courses and same kind of deal. Smart people, great people, hard workers, but when it comes time to doing those discussion questions, well, I have to answer 3 and then respond to 3 more. And so they're searching, and I don't know how much of the learning is going on because it's not a free flowing, you know, one concept leading to another because you want to talk about it. But I'm not an expert on using discussions well. Somebody might really take issue with the way I've talked about that. So I'm sorry. Other questions, please. Has anybody here used Flipgrid in any manner before? And if you've used it, what do you think about the filming yourself do this? No Flipgriders here?
I have never used Flipgrid, but I have had students make videos, and I found that recording my responses to their videos, I just did it as an MP3 file, actually was better than trying to, you know, give them some sort of written feedback.
Mm-hmm. And what's nice about this, I've done that before too, which I think is cool, and it's a more natural way to do it. When you record yourself watching theirs and you can pause theirs, they know what part you're referring to. You don't have to say, well, at some point you said this, you know, you're right at the point where they say that, you stop it. Oh, you just said that. Okay, that was great. That was awesome. You totally get it. I would use this word. You know?
I'm excited to try it out after listening to this, because it sounds like a much better platform than what I've been using.
Are there FERPA concerns that A-level vids are posted? These are only visible to the classroom. The ones that you make visible are only visible in the classroom. They're not visible to the general public. And so just as if they were making a presentation to the class, which many people do, you know, they have groups of students make presentations to the class. It's a normal expectation. So I think it fits within the realm of allowable.
Well, the
If
question
anybody
was
knows any
about,
different, tell me. What?
well, the question was about the fact that you're revealing a student's grade to other students. So because it's posted, you get an A if it's posted, you're revealing that student's grade to the other students, and in a sense, revealing other students who aren't posted's grade, because that means you know that they didn't get an A.
Well, they have been told ahead of time in the beginning of the course that if you don't want your video posted because you just don't like your video posted to the rest of the class, then it won't be posted. So they know that there are some students, I don't tell them how many, that may have gotten A's, but you don't know. You don't know which students have said that. So I think that hopefully deals with that. It's just the effects I got on the class. I got a straight 4 out of 4 reviews on that class at the end for the student evaluations, and they just kept going on about the Flipgrid.
I asked my associate VP for if I could have students grade each other's quizzes and grade each other's work, which is a similar thing. And they went and researched it and came back and said it has to meet 2 tests. It has to be for a pedagogical reason, which I think your Flipgrid absolutely is. And then 2, it has to be not the entire grade for the class. So you can't tell what they got for the class just because you saw that they got an A on this particular Flipgrid.
Right, but for grading other students, they're not doing any grading of anything on here.
No, I understand that, but it's the same concept of letting people know their grades. Because
yeah, no, there are other parts to the grade of the course, of course.
Yeah.
We have exams and things like that.
You probably want to talk with your, if you're concerned about it, you probably want to talk to your FERPA representative, but that's what mine told me.
Yeah, and there's strong pedagogical reasons. I hope the data that we've shown here kind of gets at that.
We have just a couple minutes left here, Nick. There have been a lot of questions and concerns about students and their confidence level. Maybe as we close out, you could touch on how you encourage those students in your own class to use this tool.
So what I'll do, usually after the first Flipgrid, when I'm giving a lecture, is I'll include just a little portion of somebody's video, and call out to it. And I usually pick somebody that seems like, I want to say your average Joe, but seems, fairly unassuming. I don't try to pick the best of the best, but just, somebody that seems kind of, average, and show they got this right, see the explanation. And I think after them seeing their friends do it, they have to take a stab at it. The first few times, I got a lot of people who said, in the beginning, just like you saw Anshel say, in the beginning, she was really trepidatious about it. But then they start getting feedback from their friends. They start seeing the views go up on their videos and such like that. And it really impacts, I think, confidence level. The other reason why it helps build confidence, I think, isn't so much the reaction you get from others. It's the fact that, wow, I explained this really complicated thing, and I explained it, and my teacher didn't laugh at me. He gave me some constructive criticism when I talked to him about it, gave me a couple little points here and there, if say it was C-level work or B-level work. And in the real, so you're all asking, well, how can we help them, with their confidence level? During your response, you are talking to them. There's nobody that can give them better confidence in themselves and their trajectory than you talking to them right there. You don't just have to comment on what's there, but you can say, you've been struggling with this part or that part. And so this actually gives you an opportunity to address that face-to-face, one-on-one with just them, which I think can be helpful. Do I grade their presentation style for the 5-minute video? I do not. I just usually look at content. Is what they're teaching on the concept, is it correct? Is it a full description? Does it cover all the necessary components? Yes, a lot of times my questions do have several different aspects. You know, a lot of times I'll say, please describe this, make sure to address this thing and this other thing and this other thing, or please be sure to mention the role of this or that. You know, because I think back to how I taught the course, you know, we'll discuss, you know, a concept and how these different things affect it. What I want them to cover might be very similar. So please make sure you discuss this in your answer. And I'll usually have a lot of things in there. You know, make sure you cover this in your answer, because you want them to put their best foot forward. You don't want to surprise them. Oh, you should have talked about all this other stuff. You know, John did that. You know, you want to be clear in what it is you're looking for. And so that's usually done with well-worded questions.
Well, thank you so much, Nick. We are at time, so I want to make sure that we allow people an opportunity to jump to the next session. So thank you, everybody, for joining us, and thank you, Professor Panasek, for the enlightful discussion. We do have 3 more concurrent sessions that are about to start. Please use the link in the chat to navigate to those events. I'm going to drop that in there right now. And I hope you guys all enjoy a great rest of your day.